The fluorescent lights in the HVAC office buzzed like angry wasps as I settled into my desk chair with a cup of gas station coffee. 23 years fixing air conditioners in this godforsaken town, and the highlight of my Monday was still listening to Brennan Rivers brag about his weekend conquests. You should have seen this redhead at the Marriott. Brennan was already going, not even waiting for me to power up my computer. Classy type, you know? Wedding ring tucked away in her purse like she thought nobody would notice. I half listened while scrolling through work orders. Brennan's stories usually involved embellishment and wishful thinking in equal measure. The guy looked like a potato with arms and had the personality of wet cardboard, but he told a good tale. Auburn hair, expensive suit, the whole package, he continued, leaning against my cubicle wall. Said she was in town for some legal conference. My brother Holt swooped right in. You know how he is with the smooth talk. That got my attention. Vivian had been at a legal conference this weekend. Said it was mandatory continuing education, very important for her career advancement at Morrison & Associates. She'd seemed unusually cheerful when she got home Sunday night, humming in the shower like she hadn't done in months. Conference, huh? I kept my voice casual. What kind? Some lawyer thing. She kept checking her phone, probably worried her husband would call. Brennan chuckled. Holt said she relaxed once she put it on silent. They were up until 3 a.m. My coffee tasted like ash. Vivian had told me the conference ended at 9 each night, early bedtime because of the intensive schedule. She'd answered my goodnight text at 10:15 with a simple, exhausted, talk tomorrow. Your brother still playing real estate hotshot? I asked, fishing for more details. Oh yeah, he's doing great. New BMW, that fancy house on Elm Street. Women love a guy with money, you know? This redhead was all over him once she saw his car keys. Auburn hair, legal conference, expensive taste. The description fit my wife perfectly, but surely it was coincidence? Vivian might be distant lately, but she wasn't the type for hotel room adventures. She was methodical, careful, always thinking 3 steps ahead. If she wanted out of our marriage, she'd file papers first and explain later. Did he get her name? I tried to sound amused rather than suspicious. Nah, they kept it mysterious. She said her name was Victoria or something close. Real formal type, you know? The kind who probably irons her underwear. Victoria. Vivian's middle name. The one she used when making restaurant reservations because she thought it sounded more sophisticated than Vivian Barnes, wife of an HVAC technician from the wrong side of town. My hands shook slightly as I opened the first work order. Mrs. Patterson needed her heat pump serviced before the cold snap hit tomorrow. Simple job, routine maintenance, the kind of thing I could do with my eyes closed. Exactly what I needed to keep my mind occupied while I processed what Brennan had just told me. Anyway, Brennan was saying, Holt's already planning his next move. Says she seemed like the type who might be back in town soon. Business travelers, you know, they always come back. And the work order blurred in front of me. Vivian had mentioned another conference next month. Same organization, probably the same hotel. She'd been unusually enthusiastic about attending, even though she usually complained about the boring presentations and networking requirements. Sounds like your brother hit the jackpot, I managed. Yeah, well, he's got the charm. Me, I just fix air conditioners and go home to my cat. At least Brennan was honest about his limitations. I'd been fixing air conditioners and going home to a wife who apparently found excitement elsewhere. The irony wasn't lost on me. I spent my days making sure other people stayed comfortable while my own home life had turned Arctic. My phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. Working late tonight, don't wait up. Love you. Love you. 2 words she'd been using more frequently since the weekend, like she was trying to convince herself they were still true. Or maybe trying to convince me. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, No problem. How was the conference? Her response came quickly. Boring but necessary. Same old presentations. Boring. Right. I wondered if that's how she'd describe 3 hours with Holt Rivers, or if that was reserved for her life with me. The rest of the morning dragged by in a haze of routine maintenance calls and forced conversation with customers. I kept thinking about Brennan's story, looking for holes, hoping I'd misunderstood something crucial. But the details aligned too perfectly with Vivian's weekend schedule. During lunch break, I sat in my truck outside the Patterson house and called Terry Morrow, my old boxing coach, who now ran Murphy's Tavern downtown. Terry had a talent for collecting information, occupational hazard of serving drinks to half the town's gossips and troublemakers. Merc, what's going on? Terry's gravelly voice came through the speaker. Question for you. You know anything about Holt Rivers? Real estate guy, drives a fancy BMW. Yeah, I know him. Comes in sometimes with his lawyer friends, acts like he owns the place. Why? Just curious. Heard his name around. He's a piece of work, that one. All flash, no substance. Word is he's been sniffing around some married woman lately, bragging about it to anyone who'll listen. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Married woman. Yeah, some attorney type. Classy lady, according to him. He was in Saturday night before his big conquest, buying drinks for the house, talking about how he was going to show some uptight lawyer how to have fun. Saturday night. The night before Vivian's conference ended, the night before she came home humming. You there, Merc? Yeah, I'm here. Thanks, Terry. Everything okay? You sound strange. Just processing some information. I'll talk to you later. I hung up and stared at the Patterson house, a neat little ranch with flower boxes and a welcome mat. The kind of home that represented everything I'd thought I was building with Vivian. Stability, comfort, a life worth coming home to. Apparently, I'd been wrong about what she wanted. The afternoon passed in a blur of compressor checks and thermostat adjustments. I went through the motions, smiled at customers, made small talk about the weather. Inside, I was cataloging every detail from the past few months, looking for signs I'd missed. Vivian's new workout routine that kept her out 3 evenings a week, the sudden interest in updating her wardrobe, the way she'd started putting her phone face down during dinner, claiming it helped her focus on our conversation. By the time I got home, I'd built a case that would hold up in any court. Circumstantial evidence maybe, but compelling enough to demand answers. Vivian's car wasn't in the driveway. Working late, just like she'd said. I let myself into our empty house and stood in the kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the wall clock. Sounds of a life that had been slowly draining away while I wasn't paying attention. Her coffee cup from this morning sat in the sink, lipstick stain on the rim. The same shade she'd been wearing when she left for the conference Friday afternoon. The same shade Brennan had probably seen on his brother's collar Sunday morning. I opened the dishwasher and loaded the cup, then stood there staring at the clean dishes we'd used for breakfast. Normal morning routine, normal conversation about her day ahead and mine. She'd kissed my cheek before leaving, the same perfunctory gesture she'd been giving me for months. How long had she been planning it? The conference had been on her calendar for 6 weeks, circled in red ink with a note about booking hotel reservations early. Had she known then that she'd be sharing a room with someone else? The front door opened at 8:30, and I heard her heels clicking across the hardwood floor. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a beer and a sandwich, trying to look normal. Hey, she said, dropping her briefcase by the counter. How was your day? Same old thing. Fix Mrs. Patterson's heat pump. Routine maintenance call at the office complex. I kept my voice level. How about you? Productive day? Very. We're preparing for a big case next month. She opened the refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of wine. I might need to travel again soon, more research. Another conference? Something like that. She poured herself a glass without offering me one. I'm going to take a bath and get to bed early. Long day tomorrow. She headed upstairs without kissing me goodnight, without asking about my plans for the evening, without any of the small gestures that used to connect us. I sat at the table and finished my beer, listening to water running in the master bathroom. Tomorrow I'd start asking the right questions. Tonight I'd let her think her secret was still safe. But I already knew the truth. The stranger she'd chosen wasn't a stranger at all. He was connected to my world, my workplace, my daily routine, small town, small world. And Vivian had just made it much smaller. Tuesday morning brought rain and a fresh perspective on my situation. I'd spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, listening to Vivian sleep peacefully beside me, planning my next moves. She'd always been the strategic thinker in our relationship, but 23 years of fixing broken systems had taught me a thing or two about troubleshooting. First step, confirm what I suspected. Second step, decide what to do about it. Brennan was already at his desk when I arrived, scrolling through his phone with a stupid grin on his face. Perfect timing. Morning, Brennan. How's your brother doing? Great, actually. He's got another date lined up this weekend. Same woman from the conference. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. Already? Yeah, she texted him yesterday. Something about needing to discuss property investments. Brennan waggled his eyebrows. Holt's not exactly a real estate genius, but he's not complaining about the extra attention. Property investments. Vivian had been talking about diversifying our savings lately, mentioned looking into rental properties as a long-term strategy. I'd assumed it was just financial planning. Apparently it was something else entirely. Your brother always this lucky with women? Nah, this one's different. Usually he goes for the young, dumb types. This lady's got class, money, probably looking for some excitement on the side. Brennan leaned closer, lowering his voice. Between you and me, I think she's married. The way she kept checking the time, making sure she got back to her room before midnight. Classic cheating wife behavior. There it was. Confirmation from someone who had no idea he was describing my spouse. I wanted to grab Brennan by his shirt and demand every detail, but that would raise questions I wasn't ready to answer. Sounds complicated, I said instead. The best ones always are. Holt loves a challenge. I spent the morning on automatic pilot, driving to service calls while my mind worked through the implications. Vivian wasn't just having an affair, she was planning to continue it. The property investment angle gave her perfect cover for future meetings, legitimate business reasons to spend time with Holt Rivers. My second stop was the Riverside Apartments, a complex I serviced monthly. The property manager, Janet Walsh, had been dealing with tenant complaints and maintenance issues for 15 years. She knew everyone in the local real estate business. "Janet, quick question for you," I said while checking the main HVAC unit. "You ever work with Holt Rivers, real estate guy?" "Unfortunately, yes. He's got a few rental properties around town, thinks he's some kind of mogul." Janet rolled her eyes. "Cheap when it comes to maintenance, always trying to cut corners." "Why?" "Someone mentioned he might be expanding his portfolio. Thought you might know if he's legitimate." "Legitimate? Sure, he's got his license and everything. But he's more interested in playing big shot than actually working. Spends most of his time at expensive restaurants and hotel bars, trying to impress people with money." Hotel bars, like the Marriott Lounge where he'd met my wife. "What kind of people?" "Anyone who'll listen to his sales pitch. He's always looking for investors, people with cash to put into his schemes. Usually targets professionals, doctors, lawyers, anyone with a steady income and more money than sense. Lawyers. Like Vivian, who made twice my salary and had been looking for investment opportunities. I was starting to see how this had developed. Holt hadn't just picked up a random woman at a conference. He'd targeted her specifically, probably done research beforehand. "Thanks for the info, Janet. Just wanted to know what I might be getting into." "My advice? Stay away from Holt Rivers unless you enjoy losing money and listening to bad sales pitches." I finished the maintenance work and sat in my truck, pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. Vivian's conference had been publicized in the local business journal, complete with a list of attendees and their firms. Holt could have easily identified potential targets, done background research, planned his approach. My wife hadn't been seduced by a charming stranger. She'd been played by a small-time con artist who specialized in lonely professionals with disposable income. The question was, did she realize it, or was she still caught up in the excitement of her secret romance? I drove back to the office and found Brennan eating lunch at his desk, still scrolling through his phone. "Hey, Brennan, your brother still planning to meet that lawyer this weekend?" "Yeah, why?" "Just curious. Where's he taking her?" "Some fancy place out by the lake. He's really pulling out all the stops. Wants to get her hooked on the lifestyle, you know? Show her what she's missing at home." What she was missing at home. 20 years of marriage, 2 daughters, a mortgage we'd paid down together, a life we'd built from nothing. Apparently that wasn't enough compared to lakeside dinners and smooth talk from a guy who drove a leased BMW. "Sounds expensive." "Yeah, but Holt says it's an investment. Get her interested in his properties, and she'll be writing checks for years. Plus, you know, the other benefits." The other benefits. I gripped my coffee cup hard enough to crack the plastic. "Smart guy. Your brother." "He's got it figured out. Why work hard when you can work smart?" I wanted to explain exactly how smart Holt was about to discover I could be, but that conversation would come later. For now, I needed more information and a reliable ally. After work, I drove to Murphy's Tavern. Terry was behind the bar, wiping down glasses and setting up for the evening crowd. The place was nearly empty, perfect for a private conversation. "Merc, you look like someone stole your lunch money." Terry set a beer in front of me without being asked. "What's going on?" "Remember yesterday when I asked about Holt Rivers?" "Yeah. You figure out why you're interested?" "He's sleeping with my wife." Terry's hand stopped moving. He set down the glass he'd been cleaning and looked at me directly. "You sure about that?" "Sure enough. She had a conference this weekend, came home acting different. Today I find out Holt was bragging about his conquest to anyone who'd listen, including his brother, who works with me." "Jesus, Merc, I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry yet. I'm just getting started." Terry poured himself a shot of whiskey and knocked it back. "What do you need?" "Information. You said Holt comes in here sometimes, talks big about his success with women. I need to know everything. Who he's targeted before, how he operates, what his weaknesses are." "You planning something stupid?" "I'm planning something smart. Holt Rivers thinks he's playing games with someone who doesn't have any connections, doesn't know how small this town really is. He's about to learn otherwise." Terry nodded slowly. "Give me a few days. I'll ask around, see what people know. But Merc, be careful. Guys like Holt, they don't fight fair when they're cornered. Neither do I. I finished my beer and drove home, feeling more focused than I had in months. Vivian's car was already in the driveway, and I could see lights on in the kitchen. Normal evening routine, normal married life, except now I knew it was all performance. She was setting the table when I walked in, humming again. The same tune she'd been humming Sunday night after her weekend with Holt. "Good day?" she asked without looking up. "Productive. How about you?" "Very good. I had lunch with a potential client. Discussed some investment opportunities." Investment opportunities. I wondered if she meant real estate or just investing more time in her new relationship. "Anyone I know?" "I doubt it. Real estate investor, deals with commercial properties mostly." She was lying smoothly, casually, like she'd been practicing. How many other lies had I accepted without question over the past few months? "Sounds interesting. Maybe we should look into real estate investments ourselves." Vivian finally looked at me, surprise flickering across her face. "Really? I thought you preferred keeping our money in savings accounts." "I'm open to new ideas. Maybe you could introduce me to your contact, get his professional opinion on what might work for us." "Oh, I don't think that's necessary. It was just a preliminary conversation." Of course it was. The last thing she wanted was her husband meeting her boyfriend to discuss business deals. "Well, let me know if anything develops. I'd hate to miss out on a good opportunity." She nodded and turned back to the stove, but I caught the tension in her shoulders, the way her hand trembled slightly as she stirred the pasta sauce. She was nervous now, worried about how much I might know or suspect. Good. Let her worry. After dinner, I helped with dishes while she graded papers at the kitchen table. Normal domestic scene, except I was planning her downfall while she planned her next secret meeting. "I might have to travel again next weekend," she said casually. "Follow-up meeting for that case I mentioned." "Another conference?" "Something like that, probably just overnight." Another overnight with Holt Rivers, another chance for them to play house while I stayed home like an oblivious fool. Sounds important. It could be a big opportunity for the firm. I need to handle it personally. She was getting better at lying, more confident in her deception. I wondered how long she'd been planning to leave me, or if she intended to keep both lives running parallel indefinitely. Either way, her timeline had just accelerated. By next weekend, I'd be ready to show both Vivian and Holt Rivers exactly what kind of opportunity they'd stumbled into, the kind that would change everything. Thursday brought the first piece of actionable intelligence. Terry called during my lunch break with information that made my sandwich taste like cardboard. "Your boy Holt's got a pattern," Terry said without preamble. 3 women in the past 2 years. All professionals, all married. Real estate investment is his standard hook. I sat in my truck outside the Morrison & Associates building, watching lawyers in expensive suits hurry through the rain. What happened to the others? First one figured out he was full of hot air after she lost $5,000 on a property deal that never existed. Second one got scared when her husband started asking questions. Third one, well, she's still paying for his BMW lease, far as I know. He's running a con. Long-term con, yeah. Gets them emotionally invested, then financially invested. Keeps them on the hook as long as possible. Smart, actually, if you don't mind being a complete piece of garbage. I watched Vivian walk out of the building, checking her phone as she headed toward her car. Even from a distance, I could see the smile on her face as she read whatever message had just arrived. "Terry, I need a favor." "Name it." "Can you get Holt in the bar this weekend? Maybe Saturday night?" "Probably. Why?" "I want to have a conversation with him. Nothing violent, just a friendly chat about business ethics." "Merc, trust me. I've got this under control." I hung up and followed Vivian's car at a distance, curious about where she was going during her lunch break. She drove to the Marriott Hotel and parked near the entrance. Through my windshield, I watched her walk into the lobby like she belonged there. 20 minutes later, she emerged with Holt Rivers. Seeing them together hit differently than I'd expected. Vivian looked animated, laughing at something he'd said, touching his arm in a way she hadn't touched me in months. Holt was exactly what Brennan had described. Tall, well-dressed, the kind of guy who probably practiced his smile in the mirror. They stood by his BMW for a few minutes, talking seriously about something. Then Holt handed her a folder, kissed her cheek, and got in his car. Vivian watched him drive away before walking back to her own vehicle. Business meeting. Right. That evening, I implemented phase 1 of my plan. While Vivian was upstairs taking her nightly bath, I went through her briefcase. The folder Holt had given her contained property listings for rental houses around town, complete with financial projections and investment recommendations. On the surface, it looked legitimate. but I'd learned enough about Holt's operation to spot the problems. Inflated rental estimates, hidden maintenance costs, properties that would never generate the promised returns. Classic bait for someone who knew just enough about real estate to think they were making smart decisions. Vivian was being set up, and she had no idea. I photographed the documents with my phone, then put everything back exactly as I'd found it. Tomorrow, I'd have Janet Walsh review the properties, get a professional assessment of their actual value. Friday morning brought confirmation of what I'd suspected. Janet took one look at the photos and shook her head. "These numbers are complete fiction," she said, scrolling through the property details. "This house on Maple Street, I know the owner. It's been vacant for 6 months because the foundation's cracked. No way it's generating the rental income listed here. What about this one on Oak Avenue? Condemned last year. City's planning to tear it down next month." Janet handed my phone back. "Whoever put this together is either incompetent or running a scam." "Probably both." "Your wife considering investing with this guy?" "Something like that. Do her a favor and burn these papers. She'll lose every penny." I thanked Janet and spent the rest of the day planning my next move. Vivian was walking into a financial trap, but she was too blinded by romance to see it clearly. Maybe it was time to open her eyes. That evening, I made my own move. "Honey, I've been thinking about what you said regarding real estate investments," I said over dinner. "Maybe we should seriously consider it." Vivian looked up from her salad, fork suspended halfway to her mouth. "Really?" "Yeah, we've got some savings sitting around earning nothing. Might be smart to diversify." "Well, I have been researching some opportunities." "Great. Why don't you show me what you found?" She hesitated, clearly torn between wanting to share her excitement and needing to protect her secret. "It's still preliminary research. Nothing concrete yet." "I'd like to see it anyway, get a sense of what's available." After dinner, she reluctantly brought out Holt's folder. I pretended to study the documents while she explained the investment strategy, watching her face as she repeated his sales pitch almost word for word. "This looks impressive," I said finally. "Who put this together?" "A local real estate professional, someone with extensive experience in rental properties." "I'd like to meet him, get his take on what might work best for our situation." Vivian's smile faltered. "That's not really necessary. I can handle the research myself." "I'm sure you can. But this is a big decision, and I'd feel better hearing from the expert directly. What's his name?" "I don't think—" "Vivian, if we're going to invest our savings, I want to meet the guy who's advising us. That's not unreasonable." She stared at the documents, probably calculating how to explain why her real estate expert couldn't meet her husband. "His name is Holt Rivers, but he's very busy. Probably won't have time." "Holt Rivers? Brennan Rivers' brother?" The color drained from her face. "You know him?" "Brennan works with me. Talks about his brother all the time." I kept my voice casual, interested. "Small world. I'm sure Holt would make time if Brennan asked him." "No, that's not necessary, really." "Why not? Brennan's always saying how successful his brother is, how good he is with investments. Seems like the perfect connection." Vivian was trapped, and she knew it. She couldn't explain why she didn't want me meeting Holt without revealing their relationship, but she also couldn't let me set up a meeting through Brennan without destroying her cover story. "I'll talk to him next week," she said finally. "See if he's interested in taking on new clients." "Perfect. I'm looking forward to it." She gathered up the papers quickly, avoiding eye contact. I should get some work done before bed. After she went upstairs, I sat at the kitchen table and smiled for the first time in days. Vivian was scrambling now, trying to figure out how to manage the collision between her secret life and her real one. But I wasn't done yet. Saturday morning, I called Brennan at home. "Hey, it's Merc. Quick question. Your brother available for a business consultation?" "Business consultation?" "Yeah, my wife's been researching real estate investments. Mentioned his name as someone who might be able to help us out." There was a pause. "Your wife knows Holt?" "Apparently they met at some business function. She was impressed with his expertise." "Huh, small world." "Yeah, I'm sure he'd be interested. Holt never turns down potential clients." "Great. Think he'd be available to meet this weekend? Maybe grab drinks somewhere and discuss options." "I'll call him right now. Where do you want to meet?" "How about Murphy's Tavern? Saturday night, around 8? "Sounds good. I'll let him know." I hung up and immediately called Terry. "It's set. Holt Rivers, Murphy's Tavern, 8 o'clock tonight." "You sure about this, Merc?" "Positive. Just make sure you're working the bar personally. I want a witness to everything that happens." "What exactly is going to happen?" "A conversation about business ethics, and maybe a few other topics." That afternoon, I told Vivian about the meeting. She was folding laundry in the bedroom, trying to look busy while obviously anxious about something. I talked to Brennan today, I said casually. Set up that meeting with his brother. She dropped the shirt she'd been folding. What meeting? With Holt Rivers, about the real estate investments, remember? You were going to talk to him about taking on new clients. I said I'd talk to him next week. No need. Brennan handled it. We're meeting tonight at Murphy's Tavern to discuss opportunities. Vivian sat down hard on the bed, staring at me like I just announced the world was ending. Tonight? 8 o'clock. You should come along since you've already done the preliminary research. I can't. I have plans. What plans? She opened her mouth, then closed it, realizing she couldn't explain her Saturday night plans without revealing where she'd intended to spend the evening. Work, she said finally. I have work to catch up on. On Saturday night? Important case. Very time-sensitive. That's too bad. I was looking forward to seeing you and Holt interact, get a sense of his communication style. She was pale now, probably calculating whether she could warn Holt without raising more suspicions. But any contact with him today would leave a trail. Phone records, text messages, evidence of their relationship. Maybe we should postpone, she said weakly. Why? Brennan says his brother's excited to meet us. Apparently Holt's been talking about some lawyer he met recently. Thinks she might be a good client. Vivian's hands were shaking as she picked up the dropped shirt. What did he say about her? Oh, you know how guys talk. Successful woman, good investment potential, that kind of thing. She nodded, but I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out how much Holt had revealed and to whom. I should really stay home tonight, she said. Get caught up on work. Your choice, but I'm looking forward to finally meeting the famous Holt Rivers. I left her sitting on the bed, staring at her phone like it might explode. By now, she was probably realizing that her carefully constructed secret was about to blow up in spectacular fashion. Tonight, I'd find out just how much Holt Rivers knew about the woman he'd been playing. And more importantly, he'd find out exactly who he'd been playing with. The game was about to change rules. Murphy's Tavern on Saturday night was exactly what I'd hoped for. Busy enough to provide cover, but not so crowded that conversations couldn't be overheard. Terry had positioned himself behind the bar with a clear view of the corner booth where I'd arranged to meet Holt Rivers. I arrived at 7:30 and ordered a beer, watching the door while pretending to check sports scores on my phone. At 8:15, Holt walked in, scanning the room like he owned it. He looked exactly like his brother had described. Expensive clothes, confident swagger, the kind of guy who probably had business cards with his picture on them. You must be Mercer Barnes, he said, extending a hand as he approached my table. Brennan's told me a lot about you. All good things, I hope. I shook his hand, noting the firm grip and practiced smile. Thanks for making time on short notice. Always happy to help a potential client. He slid into the booth across from me, already pulling out his phone. Brennan mentioned your wife's interested in real estate investments. Very interested. She's done some preliminary research. Thinks rental properties might be a good fit for our portfolio. Holt's smile widened. Smart woman. The rental market's very strong right now, especially for investors who know what they're looking for. Terry appeared at our table with a whiskey for Holt and another beer for me. Gentlemen, how's business? Excellent, Holt said, not bothering to look at Terry. Just discussing investment strategies with a new client. Investment strategies, Terry repeated, catching my eye. Always interesting to hear different approaches. After Terry walked away, Holt leaned forward, adopting what was probably his standard sales posture. So tell me about your wife's research. What kind of properties has she been looking at? Actually, I was hoping you could tell me. She mentioned meeting with a real estate professional recently, getting some specific recommendations. Really? Who was she working with? I took a long drink of beer, watching his face. She said his name was Holt Rivers, described him as very knowledgeable, very persuasive. The practiced smile flickered for just a moment. Holt Rivers? That's interesting. Small world. Isn't it? According to her, you two had a very productive meeting. She came home quite excited about the possibilities. Well, I meet with a lot of potential clients. Sometimes the conversations blend together. I'm sure they do, but this one was recent. Yesterday, actually. Lunch meeting at the Marriott. She brought home some property listings you'd prepared specifically for her. Holt's hand tightened around his whiskey glass. Yesterday? Thursday afternoon. She was very impressed with your professionalism. Said you really understood her needs. I think there might be some confusion. No confusion at all. Vivian Barnes, attorney at Morrison & Associates. Auburn hair, drives a silver Lexus, has very specific ideas about investment returns. The color was slowly draining from Holt's face as he realized what was happening. You're Vivian's husband. Guilty as charged, and you're the real estate expert who's been providing her with such personalized service. Holt looked around the bar like he was calculating escape routes. Look, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding was yours. You thought you were playing games with someone who didn't have connections, didn't know people, wouldn't find out about your little side business. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. The real estate investment scam, the fake property listings, the long-term con targeting married professionals with disposable income. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the photos I'd taken of his documents. Janet Walsh over at Riverside Apartments had some interesting things to say about these properties. Holt's eyes widened as he recognized his own paperwork. How did you get access to your sales materials? Vivian brought them home, wanted to share her excitement about this amazing investment opportunity she'd discovered. This is crazy. I never what? Never targeted my wife specifically? Never researched the attendees at her conference beforehand? Never spent Sunday night at the Marriott with a married woman who thought she was having a secret affair? Holt was sweating now, his confident demeanor completely gone. You don't understand the situation. I understand it perfectly. You're a small-time con artist who preys on lonely professionals, gets them emotionally invested before you start taking their money. The romance is just part of the sales pitch. It's not like that. No? Then explain to me what it is like. Explain how you happened to meet my wife at a conference you had no business attending. Explain the fake property listings. Explain why you're planning to see her again next weekend. Holt's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Around us, the normal bar conversation continued, but I could see Terry keeping watch from behind the bar, ready to intervene if necessary. She's a grown woman, Holt said finally. She makes her own choices. You're absolutely right, and I'm a grown man who makes his own choices too. Right now, I'm choosing to give you some friendly advice. What kind of advice? I leaned across the table, close enough that he could see I wasn't bluffing. The kind that might save you from making a very expensive mistake. See, Holt, you picked the wrong mark this time. Vivian isn't some lonely housewife with more money than sense. She's my wife, the mother of my children, and she's about to learn exactly what kind of man she's been trusting with her secrets. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. About consequences, about connections, about what happens when you mess with the wrong family in a small town. Holt tried to regain some of his earlier confidence. Look, whatever's going on between your wife and me is over, effective immediately. You can't control what she does. Watch me. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. This is Detective Salgado's number. He's very interested in financial fraud cases, especially ones involving fake real estate investments. One phone call, and he'll be reviewing every deal you've closed in the past 2 years. Holt's face went white. You wouldn't? Try me. Or better yet, ask Janet Walsh about the properties you've been peddling. Ask the city planning office about that condemned house on Oak Avenue. Ask your previous clients about their investment returns. Those were legitimate business deals. Were they? Because from where I'm sitting, they look like textbook fraud. And once Detective Salgado starts investigating, he's going to want to interview all your recent clients, including my wife. The implication hit him immediately. If the police investigated his business practices, Vivian would learn about his other victims, his pattern of targeting married women, the complete fiction of his investment expertise. What do you want? He asked quietly. I want you to disappear, cancel next weekend's meeting, stop taking her calls, find a new hunting ground. And if I don't? Then you'll discover that I have more friends in this town than you do. Terry here used to box professionally before he bought this place. Janet Walsh knows every property manager and real estate agent in the county. Detective Salgado owes me a favor from when I helped him with a case last year. I let that sink in for a moment. You came here thinking you were the predator, Holt, but you're in my territory now, playing with my family. That makes you the prey. Holt finished his whiskey in one gulp, his hands shaking slightly. This is insane. Over some woman? Over my woman. My wife, my life, my family. You want to run real estate scams? Fine. You want to seduce lonely housewives? Not my problem. But when you target what's mine, it becomes personal. She wanted this as much as I did. Maybe she did, but she wanted it because you lied to her, manipulated her, made her think you were something you're not. When she finds out the truth about your business practices, about your other victims, about what you really are, well, let's just say the romance will lose its appeal. Holt stood up abruptly, throwing a 20 on the table. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You're going to walk out of here, drive home, and figure out how to extract yourself from this situation without destroying what's left of your reputation. Because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone in town knows exactly what kind of businessman you really are. He started to leave, then turned back. Your wife's going to wonder why I suddenly stopped calling. Let me worry about my wife. You just worry about staying out of my way. After he left, Terry came over with fresh drinks. That went well. Better than I expected. He's scared now, realizes he bit off more than he can chew. Think he'll stay away? He'd better, because that was the friendly warning. Next time won't be so polite. I finished my beer and drove home, feeling more in control than I had since this whole mess started. Holt Rivers was neutralized, at least temporarily. Now I had to deal with Vivian. Her car was in the driveway when I got home, lights on in the living room. She was sitting on the couch with a glass of wine, still in her work clothes even though it was past 10 on a Saturday night. How did your meeting go? She asked without looking up. Very educational. Holt Rivers is an interesting guy. Is he? Oh yes, lots of stories about his business success, his investment strategies, his approach to client relations. Vivian's wine glass trembled slightly in her hand. Did you discuss any specific opportunities? We discussed several things, including his philosophy about mixing business with pleasure. She finally looked at me, and I could see the fear in her eyes. What do you mean? I mean your boyfriend's a con artist, Vivian, and a bad one at that. The wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. Red wine spread across the boards like spilled secrets, staining everything it touched. I don't know what you're talking about, she whispered. Yes, you do. The question is, what are we going to do about it? The wine stain on our hardwood floor looked like a crime scene as Vivian stared at the broken glass, her face cycling through emotions I hadn't seen in years. Fear, guilt, defiance, and something that might have been relief. How long have you known? She asked finally, not bothering to deny what we both understood. Since Monday. Brennan Rivers has a big mouth and no filter. He described his brother's weekend conquest in enough detail to paint a picture. She closed her eyes. This is a nightmare. For you, maybe. For me, it's been enlightening. I sat down in the chair across from her, maintaining distance while she processed the destruction of her secret world. Want to explain how it started? Does it matter? It matters to me. Vivian looked at the wine stain, probably seeing her marriage dissolving in the red puddle. The conference. He was at the hotel bar, struck up a conversation about real estate markets. He seemed sophisticated, successful, interested in what I had to say. And you were interested in what he had to offer. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, just one night, a chance to feel attractive again, desired. But it didn't stop at one night. No. Her voice was barely above a whisper. He called the next week, said he'd been thinking about me, wanted to discuss investment opportunities. It seemed legitimate. The investment opportunities or the continued contact? She flinched. Both. I thought I could handle it, keep it compartmentalized. How long were you planning to keep it compartmentalized? I don't know. I hadn't thought that far ahead. I leaned forward, studying her face. That's the problem, Vivian. You never think ahead when it comes to consequences. You just do what feels good in the moment and assume you can manage the fallout later. That's not fair, isn't it? 20 years of marriage, and you throw it away for some smooth-talking con artist who saw you coming from a mile away. Con artist? Did you think I was joking about that? Holt Rivers is running a scam, targeting married professional women with fake investment opportunities. You're not his first victim, and you wouldn't have been his last. The color drained from her face. That's impossible. He showed me properties, financial projections, fake properties, condemned buildings, vacant lots, numbers pulled out of thin air. I had them evaluated by someone who actually knows real estate. You're lying. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos Janet Walsh had annotated. The house on Maple Street has a cracked foundation and hasn't had a tenant in 6 months. The property on Oak Avenue is scheduled for demolition. Your boyfriend's investment portfolio is complete fiction. Vivian stared at the screen, her face crumbling as she recognized the documents she'd brought home so excitedly. This can't be right. It gets better. Holt's got at least 3 other women on the hook, all married professionals, all convinced they're having meaningful relationships with a successful businessman. You were just his latest mark. No, he cared about me. He cared about your bank account and your willingness to believe his lies. The romance was just part of the sales pitch. She was crying now, quiet tears that she wiped away with the back of her hand. You're enjoying this. Actually, I'm not. I'm furious, disappointed, and hurt. But I'm not enjoying watching you realize you've been played by a small-time crook. What did you say to him tonight? I explained the situation from my perspective, suggested he might want to find a new hunting ground. You threatened him. I educated him about consequences, about connections, about what happens when you mess with the wrong family. Vivian stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. This is insane. You can't just intimidate people. Watch me. Your boyfriend picked the wrong mark this time. He thought he was dealing with some isolated housewife who wouldn't have resources or connections. Instead, he targeted the wife of someone who knows half this town and isn't afraid to use those connections. You're acting like a thug. I'm acting like a husband whose wife has been conned by a predator. If that makes me a thug, so be it. She turned from the window, anger replacing the tears. This is why I wanted something different. This controlling, possessive behavior. You wanted something different, so you had an affair with a con artist? Real smart choice, Vivian. I wanted to feel alive again, feel like someone valued me for more than my ability to pay bills and manage schedules. And instead you found someone who valued you for your ability to write checks for fake investments. The truth of that statement hit her like a physical blow. She sat down heavily on the couch, staring at her hands. What happens now? She asked. That depends on you. What do you mean? I mean, you have choices to make. About us, about your career, about how you want to handle the fact that you almost got swindled by a small-time crook. Are you going to tell people? About the affair, that's up to you. About Holt's business practices. That depends on whether he stays away from my family. Vivian looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. So, we can work through this? Can we? You've been lying to me for weeks, planning to continue lying, ready to risk our savings on fake investments to maintain a relationship with someone who was using you. I made mistakes. You made choices, bad ones. The question is whether you're ready to make better ones. What would that look like? I stood up, suddenly tired of the whole conversation. It would look like honesty, complete honesty, about what you want, what you're willing to do to fix this, what you're willing to sacrifice to rebuild trust. And if I can't do that, then we'll handle this differently. Divorce, custody arrangements, division of assets. All very civilized and legal. You'd really end our marriage over this. Vivian, you already ended our marriage. I'm just deciding whether it's worth rebuilding or if I should cut my losses and move on. She was crying again, harder this time. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far, and now we both have to live with the consequences. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at the screen and saw Holt's name. Tell your wife I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. Won't be contacting her again. I showed Vivian the message. Looks like your boyfriend's decided to cut his losses. She read it twice, then handed the phone back without comment. So that's it? She asked. He just disappears? That's what smart predators do when they realize they've been caught. They find easier targets. I feel like such an idiot. You should. You are a smart, successful woman who got played by a mediocre con artist because you were lonely and flattered by his attention. Do you have to be so brutal? Would you prefer gentle lies? That's what got you into this mess in the first place. Vivian wiped her eyes and looked around our living room like she was seeing it for the first time. What do we do now? Now you clean up that wine stain while I decide whether I want to try saving this marriage or if I'd rather start over with someone who won't fall for the first smooth talker who pays her a compliment. Mercer, don't. Not tonight. I need time to think, and you need time to figure out what you really want. Because if we try to work through this, it's going to be on my terms, with my rules, and with complete transparency about everything. I headed toward the stairs, then stopped. One more thing. If Holt contacts you again, for any reason, you tell me immediately. And if you're tempted to find comfort somewhere else while we're figuring this out, remember that I know how to find things out in this town. Next time, I might not be so understanding. Upstairs, I could hear her moving around, probably cleaning up the broken glass and wine stain. Normal domestic activity after an abnormal conversation that had changed everything between us. Tomorrow, we'd start figuring out whether our marriage was worth saving or if it was time to cut our losses and move on. But tonight, I was satisfied with the knowledge that Holt Rivers was out of our lives and Vivian finally understood the consequences of her choices. The game wasn't over, but the rules had definitely changed. And for the first time in weeks, I was the one making them.